It begins not with a question, but with a subtle whisper behind your thoughts. A sensation, perhaps, that something about this place, this so-called world, doesn't quite fit. The buildings stand. The sun rises. Your feet touch the ground. But beneath it all, behind the steady rhythm of time and form, there is a presence. A soft flicker in the corners of perception, suggesting that none of this is as solid, as real, as unquestionable as it seems. Imagine this. You are walking through a dream, not realizing it's a dream. The scenery responds to your beliefs, the characters mirror your subconscious, and the very laws of physics are woven from the assumptions you were taught to never question. And yet, something tugs at you. A hidden riddle encoded into the silence between your thoughts. It doesn't scream, it doesn't demand, it simply waits patiently until you are quiet enough to hear it. You are inside a thought, it says. Not your thought, not even the world's thought, but perhaps the thought that contains all other thoughts. A meta-awareness, an infinite mind dreaming itself into infinite forms. And you, dear listener, are one of them. A ripple in its imagination, mistaking yourself for the ocean floor. This is not an idea to be lightly brushed aside, for if the nature of your reality is more dreamlike than physical, more mental than material, then everything changes. Every rule, every goal, every fear. Because if you are truly inside a thought, then the limits you perceive, the walls you run into, may be nothing more than habits of perception, echoes of an inherited dream, and like any dream, it can be altered, awakened from, or even consciously rewritten. But first, you must slow down. We are taught to move too fast, to think incessantly, to grasp, analyze, control. But the structure of this dream is held together by those very impulses. The more we seek to capture it, the more it evades us. The more we chase truth like a hunted prize, the more it becomes a hall of mirrors. And so awakening doesn't begin with answers. It begins with stillness, with seeing, not with the eyes, but with awareness itself. Imagine a fish born in water that has never breached the surface. It maps its world through currents and waves, assuming the fluid medium is the totality of existence. But above the surface is a sky, and above that sky, stars. And above even that, perhaps the original silence from which all forms arise. To the fish, this is unthinkable. But only because the fish has confused environment with essence. So too do we confuse this world with what is. The ancient sages of many traditions, Hermetic, Vedic, Gnostic, and beyond, have hinted at this truth again and again, that the world we see is a projection, a symbol, a veil. The Hindus called it Maya, the illusion. The Gnostics referred to it as a simulation crafted by lesser powers. The Hermeticists spoke of mind as the root of all matter. Even in modern physics, the farther one peers into the subatomic realm, the more the universe begins to look like information. Not solid stuff, but probabilities encoded in awareness. What then is the implication? If the universe is mental in nature, if this very moment is the unfolding of a thought so vast and deep that we mistake it for external reality, then awakening is not about escaping or fighting the dream. It is about becoming lucid within it. It is about recognizing yourself not as the character, but as the awareness behind the character's eyes. Not as the one who suffers the dream, but the one who, in some quiet, mysterious way, participates in its creation. And this, precisely, is what makes the path so subtle. For you must awaken not by changing the dream's content, but by changing your relationship to it. By realizing that the dream is within you, not you within it. That the entire landscape of life, with all its seeming separation and chaos, arises from a deeper unity, a unity that is not a philosophy, but an experience waiting at the edge of each breath. You are never in the world. The world is in you, but not the you that occupies a name and body, not the personality that grew up with rules and wounds. That you is a temporary ripple, useful, even necessary, but not ultimately real. The true you is the witnessing presence that was there before the first memory and will remain after the last breath. It is that still point in the turning world, that center which cannot be found because it is what you are looking from. And so, the great journey begins, not outward, into new information or external revelations, but inward, into the uncharted terrain of consciousness itself. For to understand that you are inside a thought, not a world, is to begin reclaiming the authorship of your own experience, not as an ego manipulating outcomes, but as a spark remembering its source. This journey will not hand you certainty. It will strip you of illusions. It may unravel the scaffolding of everything you once believed, but it will leave you with something infinitely more precious, the quiet realization that you were never lost, never broken, and never separate. Not even for a moment. You were simply dreaming. To grasp the weight of the idea that you are inside a thought and not a world, we must first begin dismantling the habitual architecture of perception, the structure that tells you that this desk, this sky, this body are out there, separate and distinct from the thing observing them. This structure is not inherently wrong, but it is incomplete. It is a mask on a mystery, and the mystery cannot be approached through linear understanding alone, but through insight, through a widening of awareness that allows paradox to live comfortably beside truth. The first core thread that runs through this tapestry is the nature of reality as consciousness, not as something held within consciousness, but as consciousness itself. In other words, there is no container outside your awareness. When you see a tree, the image of that tree is not sitting inside your skull, nor is the actual tree inside your body, but the experience of the tree only ever appears within awareness. In this light, awareness is not a byproduct of the world. It is the world, perceived from the inside out. The implications are enormous. If your entire experience arises within consciousness, then the notion of inside and outside is only a function of mental interpretation. You see a body in a mirror and call it me. You see a sky and call it not me. But both experiences emerge within the same field of knowing. The idea that one is you and the other is not you is a thought, a label superimposed onto raw presence. In truth, the distinction is illusory. All phenomena share the same essence, just appearing in different forms, like ripples dancing on a single ocean of mind. This brings us to the idea of projection. The world, in this view, is not a static environment that you enter at birth. It is a dynamic unfolding, a feedback loop between the dreamer and the dream. You are not in a location. You are in a relationship. Everything you see is filtered through internal constructs, beliefs, traumas, ancestral memories, cultural programming. These filters are not decorations on perception. They create perception. You do not see the world as it is. You see the world as you are. The ancient mystics, seers, and even modern quantum physicists have echoed this strange truth. The observer and the observed are entangled in a dance that cannot be unraveled. The line between self and reality blurs until the distinction becomes meaningless, and it is here that we encounter the second foundational insight. Your thoughts are not just responses to reality, they are shapers of it. The way you think determines what you perceive. The inner state writes the outer script. So then, what is this thought in which you dwell? It is not a fleeting mental event like deciding what to eat for lunch. It is more akin to a cosmic intention, a divine meditation dreaming itself into existence over and over again. This thought has no boundaries, no edge, no opposite. It is the mind of the one, fragmented into the illusion of the many. It is the eternal subject wearing the costume of the object. The galaxies swirl inside it. Time folds inside it. Your entire history is a whisper within its infinite echo. This is not simply poetic philosophy. It is energetic truth. You have felt it before, in moments where time stands still and the veil thins. When you look into someone's eyes and forget where you end and they begin. When a sudden burst of awe grips you at the sight of a moonlit ocean or the hush of a forest. In those moments, you are not looking at the world. You are reuniting with the thought that made it and recognizing yourself within it. Another core theme, then, is this. Awakening is not about acquiring something. It is about remembering. You are not becoming enlightened. You are peeling away everything that made you forget that you already are. The mind complicates. The soul simplifies. And in that simplicity, the great reversal occurs. You stop trying to change the world and begin understanding how the world is the mirror of what you believe yourself to be. The thought you are inside is layered. At its densest level, it feels like a physical world, solid, heavy, governed by cause and effect. But move deeper and you find the symbolic realm, where meaning forms matter. Deeper still lies the archetypal realm, where universal patterns shape entire lives. And deeper yet, the realm of pure awareness, formless, vast, indivisible. Most live on the surface, asleep to these strata. But waking up is about descending, not into darkness, but into the luminous interior of being itself. This descent is also an ascent. The further in you go, the freer you become. The shackles of identity fall away. You begin to sense that what you took to be your personal thoughts were not entirely your own. They were echoes, signals from the thought field you inhabit. But the moment you become aware of them, truly aware, they lose their power to define you. And in that moment, you stand at the edge of a great secret, that the dream never held you. It was always you holding the dream. In the stillness between breath and thought, this becomes clear, not as an idea, but as a knowing. The world you feared was never your prison. It was your reflection, waiting for you to look deep enough to recognize yourself beyond form, beyond story, beyond time. Some truths cannot be told directly. They must be wrapped in story, embedded in symbols, and carried across the vast ocean of the mind like messages in bottles, waiting for the right moment, the right eyes, the right silence to be opened and understood. For when we speak of being inside a thought, we are not merely describing a metaphysical theory. We are touching the very fabric of myth itself, the silent architecture beneath all stories, religions, dreams, and personal awakenings. In these symbolic narratives lies the coded memory of your origin, your nature, and your exit from illusion. Consider the ancient myth of the cave, told by Plato nearly 2,400 years ago. Prisoners are chained in darkness, facing a wall upon which shadows are cast by puppets dancing in firelight. To them, the shadows are reality. They name them, fear them, revere them. But one prisoner breaks free and turns around. The fire blinds him. At first, he resists, but then he walks out of the cave into the sunlight, and the light, terrifying at first, reveals a truth so vast it shatters everything he thought he knew. This, of course, is not about caves. It is about mind. It is about the conditioned belief that the images we see are real in themselves, rather than reflections. It is about mistaking mental constructs for the world. But more than that, it is about the courage it takes to question the thought you are in, to turn around, to walk out. Then there is the dream of the butterfly, whispered by the Taoist sage Zhuangzi. One night he dreams he is a butterfly, free, floating, without concern. But when he awakens, he wonders, was he a man dreaming he was a butterfly? Or is he now a butterfly dreaming he is a man? Here, the line between dream and reality dissolves. The dream is not less real. It is simply a different layer of the same field of awareness. And so, the narrative invites you to ask the unaskable. Are you dreaming this life? Or is this life dreaming you? There is a reason such stories persist through the ages. They are not mere metaphors. They are keys, portals, reminders encoded in archetype and myth that beneath the ordinary lies a living intelligence, using symbols to whisper through the veil. And when you begin to understand this, reality itself begins to change shape. You start to see that everything around you, your life, your relationships, your struggles, is not random or separate. It is a mirror reflecting back your inner state. The thought shows you your mind. The dream shows you your beliefs. In the language of the mystics, this is known as the principle of correspondence. As within, so without. As above, so below. It is not a poetic phrase. It is a fundamental law of the dream world. Just as the story you tell yourself becomes your emotional reality, the internal patterns you hold become the architecture of your outer experience. You attract not what you want, but what you are. Or more precisely, what you unconsciously believe yourself to be. This is why symbolic narratives matter. Because they speak the language of the unconscious. They bypass the logical mind and awaken the deeper knowing. When you read the tale of the phoenix who dies in fire only to be reborn in brilliance, you are not just reading fantasy. You are reading the code of transformation embedded in your own psyche. When you hear of Christ descending into death and rising again, you are being shown the inner descent every soul must take before realizing it was never separate from Source. When Buddha sits beneath the Bodhi tree and faces every illusion the mind can conjure, he is you in the moment before awakening. And even more subtle than myth are the personal symbols, those strange, reoccurring patterns in your life that refuse to go away. A number that follows you, a phrase that seems to come from nowhere, a sensation of déjà vu that feels like a memory from another dream. These are not accidents. They are symbols breaking the fourth wall of your reality. They are signposts, nudges, vibrations from deeper layers of the thought trying to make contact with the surface. In this view, nothing is ordinary. Your life is not just a series of events. It is a living story unfolding in tandem with your own evolution. Every challenge is a symbolic test. Every person you meet is a reflection of a part of yourself you are ready to see. The recurring heartbreak, the impossible coincidence, the spontaneous insight, they are all lines in a cosmic poem you forgot you were writing. But here is the paradox. To decode the symbols, you must first surrender the need to control them. You must become a student of your own dream. You must learn to listen, not with the ears, but with that still space behind the mind, where resonance lives. The thought you are inside does not shout, it reveals. It does not demand, it offers. And in those offerings, if you are patient, the story becomes visible, not as fate but as a map to your own liberation. To wake up, then, is to become lucid, to realize that the narrative of your life is not fixed, but fluid. That meaning is not imposed from outside, but emerges from within. And that symbols are not decorations. They are the language of the soul speaking through the dream. And once you understand the symbols, the world becomes a different place. Not a prison, but a canvas. Not a test, but a dialogue. Not a world, but a living thought, in which you, if you are willing, can co-create. It's one thing to encounter a lofty truth in the stillness of contemplation, or to sense the infinite echo of your own mind rippling across the canvas of existence. But what then? The realization that you are living inside a thought, not a material world as commonly conceived, can either remain an ethereal insight or become a catalyst for radical transformation. This is where the sacred meets the ordinary, where vision must pour itself into form, where ideas walk barefoot into your relationships, your choices, your habits, your sense of identity. So how does this metaphysical shift ripple into your everyday life? How do you live as if you are within a thought, awake, lucid, and responsible for the very texture of your reality? It begins with a moment, a pause, the kind that interrupts the autopilot momentum of a thought chain before it barrels you into reaction. In that pause, you remember, this isn't just a moment in your day. It's a projection in the dreamscape of your consciousness. The tone of the voice you use, the look you give, the way your body responds. It is all part of the script being broadcast from deeper frequencies of belief and emotion. When you become aware of this, you're no longer at the mercy of the dream. You begin to influence the thought consciously. Imagine your thoughts as frequencies rather than fragments. Each one sends out a ripple, a vibration that alters the landscape of your experience. This is not metaphor. It is the energetic anatomy of reality. Thoughts laced with resentment or fear create constricted, mirrored feedback in your life. Thoughts infused with surrender, curiosity, or deep presence generate fields that bend circumstances in unforeseen ways. The world you experience isn't merely responding to your actions. It's echoing your vibration. And vibration begins in belief, matures in thought, and blossoms in action. Once this is grasped, your attention becomes sacred. What you attend to, you energize. What you energize, you invite. What you invite, you live. Most people spend their lives attending to what they fear or resent, and then wonder why those patterns persist. But what if you realized that your very attention was the brush painting the landscape of the thought you're inside? You would guard it not with paranoia, but with reverence. You would use it not reactively, but artistically. Attention would become prayer. This shift also radically transforms your relationship with identity. The ego, once perceived as a solid, permanent self, begins to look more like a character being played in a dream theater. You don't need to destroy the ego. You need to see it. To understand that it's one layer of the thought, a necessary tool, but not the architect. The one who observes the ego, who notices the mind spinning its webs. That is the dreamer. That is you in your formless aspect. You are not your narrative. You are the space in which the narrative appears. This realization softens your grip. You no longer need to defend every opinion, win every argument, prove your worth. Because you see the game for what it is, a drama designed to reflect back to you what still needs integration. The moment you embrace this, life stops being adversarial. Every confrontation becomes a mirror, every delay, a message, every problem, a coded invitation to evolve. In this way, the thought becomes your greatest teacher. And yet, this awakening is not an escape from the world. It is a fuller immersion into it. With new eyes, with lucid awareness, you still go to work, still face bills, still interact with people who forget they are dreaming. But something has shifted beneath the surface. You stop reacting and start listening. Not just to what is said, but to what is echoing beneath. You can sense the symbolic structure in events. Why that person triggered you, why that door closed, why your plans unraveled. You're no longer navigating life in the dark. You're reading the dream. And once you rate it, you can edit it. But editing the dream is not about fantasy or forced manifestation. It's about alignment. When your inner world becomes coherent, when your thoughts, beliefs, and emotions harmonize with clarity and authenticity, the outer world begins to respond in kind. You don't control reality by brute force. You co-resonate with it. You entrain with its intelligence. Practical integration also means noticing when you've slipped back into the illusion. The world has a strong gravity. It pulls you toward forgetting. You'll feel it in the moment you judge yourself for not being far along enough. In the moment you identify with shame or defend a belief out of fear. But forgetting is part of the dance. The key is to return. Over and over, each return makes the thought more lucid. Each pause, more potent. Relationships become a profound arena for this work. Because every interaction reveals what you believe to be true about yourself. Do you feel unseen, unworthy, powerless? Those feelings are not caused by other. They are summoned through them. When you see this, blame dissolves. Compassion deepens. You no longer seek to fix others. You seek to integrate the places within you that still hold distortion. And as you do, your outer world reshapes to reflect that healing. There is also great power in solitude, in giving yourself moments of stillness where you remember the dreamer behind the dream. Whether through meditation, nature, silence, or creative expression, these moments are like stepping outside the set of a movie to remind yourself it's a film. Not to reject it, but to re-enter with awareness, choosing your role with intention rather than default. Finally, the most practical implication of all, responsibility without shame. Once you know you are within a thought and that the dream responds to you, it becomes tempting to fall into guilt for creating pain or difficulty. But that is the ego hijacking truth to reinforce itself. The higher perspective is not shame, but sovereignty. You didn't create difficulty to suffer. You created it to wake up. The same dream that binds you also holds the key. The same pattern that hurts you is trying to speak. When you listen, you liberate yourself. Not by force, but by understanding. This is how the thought teaches you. Not through abstract theory, but through lived experience. Through recurring loops. Through dreams that repeat until you see their script. Through moments that ask, will you react the same way? Or will you wake up now? And when you do, when even for a moment, you respond with awareness instead of reaction, something shifts. The dream opens, the mirror bends, the thought evolves, and so do you.